Hello and welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like and subscribe on this show, on this feed. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. I'm Johnny Venerable. He's Bo Brock. We got DA, Damien Anderson in the house. Gentlemen, we are 1 week away from the end of the 2022-23 NFL season, which in turn means Black Monday is right around the corner. Bo Brock, you had an opportunity to chat with Kliff Kingsbury today. Let me ask you this. Is he feeling the heat ahead of Black Monday?
I mean, he says he's focused. He's saying all the right things. He's focused on getting his team better on a day-to-day basis. And as he sees it, he is the coach, and he's not going to go any further than that. I don't think he's going to be caught looking to any further ahead than the 49ers on Sunday in Santa Clara for the regular season finale. But, you know, Kliff Kingsbury looks like he's exhausted. Kliff Kingsbury's been through the absolute ringer this entire season. Say what you will about the guy as far as his game management, is whether or not he gets the team up or not each and every game. But this is a guy that's been coming to work, and he's faced, you know, one of the most adversity-filled seasons of his entire tenure, maybe of his entire coaching career, which is now 10 years long. So, but absolutely, I think it's undeniable as far as the pressure and the heat on his seat right now and where he stands as far as this organization. I mean, we could legitimately be in the final days of Kliff Kingsbury.
Guys, I don't know. I mean, it's all speculation, right? It's all unknowns. And until Michael makes any decision, I think that all the Cardinals fans are anxious and waiting. I mean, right? I mean, that's just normal. But you're measured by your performance, and we look at that. It could be to either support the injury narrative or go towards the fact that he hasn't performed, guys haven't progressed. And as Bo, as you said, it may be the final days. And I think that everyone's anticipating what that change will be.
Yeah, it just, to me, it feels like every time I look at him, especially in the press conferences, he just it looks like he's lost a lot of the joy that he used to have coaching this football team and this franchise. And whether that's from the influx of injuries, the losing takes a toll on you every Sunday, going out there feeling like you've got an opportunity to win, and yet you come out on the short side of things. 6-game losing streak is the longest losing streak for this team dating back to the Steve Wilkes era. This is the longest one, I believe, that Kliff Kingsbury has endured as the head coach of this franchise dating back to 2019. And yeah, you know, he took shots at the organization through anonymous sources, I believe, in that ESPN article by Josh Weinfuss and company, saying he doesn't have all the resources to compete. And if he gets fired next week, I'm sure that mindset's not going to change, right? But to me, you look at these teams around the NFL that are doing less with more, maybe not right now with the Arizona Cardinals, but like a Brian Daboll, for instance, they're making the playoffs with almost double-digit wins with a significantly less talented roster than the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, the excuse making with the injuries, I think, needs to be put to bed. But I get it. It's like it's part of the NFL. It's part of how we dissect this thing. Well, they don't have Kyler and Zach Ertz and blah blah blah. They had enough pieces, Bo, when they were 4-8 to compete, and they weren't getting it done. They were not winning games, and it's compounded by the fact that everybody jumped on this head coaching staff and Steve Keim as well after those extensions were giving out. And it's like, okay, well, you better win now. And you didn't win. And it's been a continuation of at the end of last year when they collapsed.
The no D-Hop contingency plan was a failure, right? As much as we like what we've seen from Marquise Hollywood-Brown as him being a wide receiver too, good compliment to DeAndre Hopkins, that we haven't seen them on the field enough to really say that, but I think I can confidently say that. I mean, obviously those guys are two big playmaking wide receivers, and then the drafting as your top pick, Trey McBride, 55th overall, you know, that contingency plan, that safety net, that, hey, we're going to be fine for the 6 games without DeAndre Hopkins was a failure, right? I mean, we didn't see Kliff
and
Kingsbury.
They had 6 months to prepare for that. It's not like you lose him and you got to prepare for next Sunday.
Well, but guys, I think the answer was Marquise Hollywood-Brown, and you don't expect to lose Ertz throughout the season, and you don't expect to lose Murray. And I'm not an advocate for the injury narrative. I mean, the game's about wins and losses, and you have to win football games, and they've struggled to do that this season. I will say, with the 12 losses that they've had, 6 have been one-score games, 4 have been winnable games, and 2 have been blowouts. So they're not playing embarrassing football. I think that's why maybe it's hard for some to look at this and say, well, you know, okay, I get it. Give them, you know, opportune situation. I feel as though that he had that offensively with the guys that he had. I really do feel like he had all the groceries, everything that he needed to cook offensively, and that just didn't happen this season.
Lack of identity is, I think, one of the most jarring things that you see with this team, even with the injuries. Like, what do they do well? What have they ever done well under Kliff Kingsbury? Bo, we've talked about the narrative. Who is he elevated? I mean, he's talking today, and it's, I believe him when he says this, but it's kind of tongue in cheek. Like, well, look at Trey McBride. Look how well he's doing at the end of the year, and kind of touting up like we've developed him. That you're grasping for straws, man. If you're taking a game from Trey McBride in week 17, which he had a nice game, as really the only kind of rookie offensive contribution that you've gotten since Kyler Murray in 2019, that to me, I put my hands up and I'm like, that's too little too late. Like, you can't rely on a Trey McBride performance against a hapless Atlanta Falcons to kind of save the narrative against you being fired. To me, that's just that needed to be in motion. You had him inactive the first game of the season, which was a joke. This team was not good enough not to play their second round pick, Bo.
Yeah, I mean, he dealt with the back injury. I mean, let's put all the facts and details in that. He had the back injury. I mean,
he was practicing, though. He was practicing.
He was. If he was coming from the Mount West, he's going to the NFC West. I think he was a little further behind. And like a lot of this conversation, the blame has kind of gone off of Steve Keim's shoulder where it should be directly on his shoulders, right? But we're sitting here talking in the final week potentially of the head coach who, despite, in spite of his GM, hasn't been able to, produce any better results with a roster that's depleted by injuries and depleted as far as depth due to lack of good drafting, lack of good scouting, lack of, adding impact makers in free agency or via trade. So, regardless of how you look at it, as far as who's to blame there, I just think that you're just going to circle back to this team is 5-16 in their last 21 games. They've won one game in the last calendar year at home. And in a results business, those aren't the results that you're ever going to be content with, and that you very rarely, especially in year 4, will survive a changing of the guard at a head coaching position in the NFL.
And I just want to make a quick point, DA, that Kliff Kingsbury was hired by Michael Bidwill, yes, but by Steve Keim, thus kind of hitching his wagon to Steve Keim. And you could sit here and say, well, it's on Steve Keim, and it is. Then that makes Kliff Kingsbury an unfortunate casualty of the firing and the house cleaning that's going on, because you are not going to insert an organization with that is proactive and wants to move on. You can't saddle a new GM, whether it's an internal or external hire, with Kliff Kingsbury. You have to say and do exactly what you didn't do in 2018 and clean house and give somebody a clean slate to be able to go out and win and put the best product on the field and have a coach that they buy into. And so I just can't, like, we can make excuses for Kliff, and that's fine. But he was hired by Steve. He and Steve, is the way I look at it, package deal.
But Michael has to sign off. Yeah, I understand that, but Michael has to sign off on every decision made within that organization. So I'm sure it was carefully vetted. Like, hey, we're picking a coach that hasn't coached in the National Football League, that had some success at the college level, and hey, he's going to be the new innovator of what we've seen with San Francisco and other teams within our conference. And that hasn't worked out quite well yet. And some would say, well, hey, it's the culture. It resonated from Steve Keim. I mean, it's easy to be the blame game right now. As Bo said, it's a results-driven league, and the results haven't added up. And the narrative that you can use is injuries, but there hasn't been development making. There hasn't been performances, elite performances outside the realm of, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray hasn't been that $230 million quarterback that's expected of him, this season. That was just limited. You saw, pieces of it in the Raiders game, but I think throughout the season, what we see, a perfect example is like Green Bay, right? Like everyone thought that it was going to be a dumpster fire. You lose their best receiver. However, some way Aaron Rodgers keeps them relevant. In every game, that Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to keep them relevant. And you just haven't seen that. Yeah, and I went all through over all the data and metrics of, all the close games this year, but the Cardinals haven't won them. And right. I mean, that's a big difference. And I think that's why fans are frustrated, Johnny and Bo. But real quick, and I'll throw this back to you guys, but with that decision comes overhaul, comes turnover, and then you're waiting again. You know what I mean? And we've already seen coaches get fired within one season. So does that make the most sense to, align yourself with a new coach, clean house completely, or just get a new GM. Account this year. I'm just being real, just putting everything on the table, as Bo said. Count this year as injury riddled, and hey, we're going to ride with Kliff and get a new GM who sees things differently.
I like this comment here by Tom Lyons. Rap Sheet said Kingsbury today has not been notified yet about next year. If they were keeping him, they would be a vote of confidence that he is not gone or he is gone. So how do you read into that, Bo Brock? Do you think that means anything? I would say a little bit of weight to that. I think Michael Bidwill will probably use the platform of Hard Knocks to go to Kliff and maybe the team and say, Kliff is our coach moving into next year. We have confidence in Kliff. We're going to get this right. That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, then you would have the as far as like the pitchforks and everybody rallying around and outside the facility there in Tempe. If he did say, hey, let me give you an insurance for at least one more year or beyond 2022, 2023, that would be a brutal blow to this fan base, because I think that they're seeking real change. They're seeking, and they feel like the old regime, you can't have pieces lingering, and that includes the head coach. I think when there's a job to continue that needs to be done in the regular season finale in Santa Clara. I mean, you can joke about, what it doesn't mean to this organization and how very little it, whatever happens in that game means. I mean, you still have to have a guy that's been doing it all season long. He's been doing it for 4 seasons practically for the Arizona Cardinals. Just let him just ride this one out. You're not going to tell him, hey, you're fired. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, that's in any profession. Nobody is given, a heads up like, hey, just so you know, step in my office. This is your final week. We're going to fire you on Friday. Like, that never happens. I mean, if you're an owner, it's best in your interest, or a boss or a CEO, to play it close to your vest, right? But I think all the signs are there. I think if he were on the other side, if he were staying, I think exactly what Tom was saying, the assurance would be there. We talked about it. Was Kliff given an assurance at the end of last week, where they kind of pivoted their game plan from playing a bunch of these veterans to sitting pretty much everybody outside of Hollywood Brown and James Conner?
I don't think so. I think
right. I don't either.
It just sounds like they're just trying to win a game. I was of the mindset, David Blau was a complete and utter failure of a maneuver in terms of trying to purposely lose that game. Then you watch him, and he's much better than Trace McSorley. Now, is that an indictment on Kliff and company for keeping Trace McSorley around all year? That's a conversation for a different day. But
remember all those debates we had at the end of training camp? Like, you got to keep Trace McSorley. I think he's a future player. And we said,
guys, the Bucs defense is different than Atlanta, right? So I mean, we keep everything everything contextual, and we just rode the wave that Atlanta's
ball was coming out
defense is ass.
Man.
Though I mean, he looked rhythmic. He looked like he had really comfortable. I mean, he looked.
Kliff was trying to win that game yesterday. He wasn't.
Trace McSorley threw the ball 10 times DeAndre Hopkins, and he got the ball to him once. I mean, that's almost impossible as far as an NFL quarterback. And yeah, sure, credit the Bucs defense. Or the conversation we had about 5 running backs, and now how many running backs do they have on this team? It's just all those debates we had and all those things that we thought, the team scouted and had, some players there that should vie for some playing time, and they just haven't panned out. And even when they have gotten playing time, when the lights were brighter and the ammo was live, I mean, they just haven't performed. So I just think that's just a funny indictment. I thought it was interesting to see what David Blau had to say about Kliff Kingsbury in the post game yesterday. We have this quote from Blau. Blau and Kingsbury said, quote, "Man, Kliff called a great game. He was in my headset all day helping me. He's an unbelievable coach, offensive mind. Have him walking me through everything that we can get to at the line of scrimmage made my job easy. I think I told you all the other day, it's my job to go to the right place with the football. I wanted to prove that I could do that." As far as Kliff goes, Blau continues, it was unbelievable for me the way he sees the game, the way he breaks it down. I know I'm the 4th quarterback for 4 weeks. I get it. It's not an ideal situation. It's not ideal for anyone, but he's done an unbelievable job, not flinching and helping me get up to speed and just being able to go out there and operate. We had a chance to win it. Now, I say take that with a grain of salt, because David Blau obviously was looking for an opportunity, and Kliff Kingsbury is the guy that gave it that opportunity. I asked Kliff today, I said, as far as walking your quarterbacks, and you've got 4 quarterbacks now in the last 4 weeks, is that something you do with everybody? And he says, yeah, he does do it with everybody. Now, was he giving him a few more extra tips because this is a guy that's been in the facility for 16 days? Yes. But I thought that was that did paint Kliff Kingsbury and gave us some insight into just kind of the in-game management with the quarterbacks that we really hadn't heard before from Kliff.
David Blau is going to look great at training camp with the Pats next year when Kliff's calling that offense. Camp arm for David Blau. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to get a job next year with wherever Kliff Kingsbury lands.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't burn bridges. And I think that David, as you mentioned, Kliff gave David an opportunity to go out there and he shined and he looked comfortable in doing so. And I mean, people in the chat are saying, McSorley has been here for, multiple seasons and Blau just got here. I mean, that's competition. You compare those two in itself. And he looked comfortable in the pocket and did his things and gave this team an opportunity to win the football game. And to get that respect and adoration, but as well, he's playing the long game. You know what I mean? He's the fourth quarterback of the season. He knows that Kliff, maybe another quarterback coach or offensive coordinator in this league. And hey, man, think about me. Think about me if you get another opportunity, or if you're here, let me sling this thing.
David Camp Arm Blau. I can't wait to see it next year when we got our preseason schedule out. I know everyone wants to talk about Harbaugh and Payton and the head coaching vacancies. We're going to get to that in our next segment. But Bo, you heard today, Kyler Murray's going to have surgery when? Tomorrow?
Yeah, so Kliff Kingsbury, he's been kind of, I don't know why he's been quiet on this and mum.
Does he just not know? Is that a possibility?
I wouldn't think so, right? It's your franchise quarterback, and every time we've asked him about when Kyler's going to have surgery, because there was a report when they played on Christmas, Sunday Night Football, that it was set for January 3rd. The Dallas Cowboys team doctor was going to do that, and Kliff confirmed basically all of that today. And between now and the new year, he was filled in on the information. And so Kyler is going to go under the knife tomorrow, and he's anxious. He's chomping on the bit to really start this rehab process and get back as soon as possible. Kyler has been inside the facility in Tempe, kind of leaning on some guys who have had knee surgeries before, kind of going through what their process was. And Kliff joked, Kyler is much more athletic than those guys. Maybe he was talking to Max Williams or something. He's much more athletic than the guys who have had the knee surgery so far. And he expects, with his athleticism and his age, maybe he can get back a little quicker. But right now, I think the time frame remains that October that they reported on Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago.
Godspeed on the surgery, John. Godspeed on the surgery. I hope he does well. But I mean, now you guys understand why you get that $230 million, because things like this happen, right? I guarantee you, he feels a lot better going into surgery with $230 million contract versus playing on his rookie deal. Bo and John.
Well, I think that says a lot about just how that offseason unfolded for both Kliff, Keim, or all three of them, and Kyler, because each and every year you saw progress from this organization, digging themselves out of that big hole that was 2018 roster-wise, and where they were schematically, offensive scheme-wise, how they were able to go from 3 wins to 5 wins to 8 wins, and then to 11 wins in a playoff appearances. Like, was it realistic that this team could stay at 11 or get higher than that? Probably not. I mean, it was more realistic that they were going to take a step back, and as they were all staring down, the end of their deals coming, it just made sense for them to all vie to get extended after their most successful season together. And, now in hindsight, those deals look rough. But, you see that their representation was right by getting after it after seeing how things have played out this entire season.
Always get your money when you can. The healing process for Kyler Murray begins tomorrow. The healing process for all of us begins a week from today, you would assume. But right now, you can go on DraftKings, the DraftKings Sportsbook app, make a little coin in the meantime. We had our DraftKings player of the game, king of the game yesterday. That was the aforementioned Trey McBride. He was fantastic. Career high, 7 catches, 78 yards, and a tutty. And if you want to keep that good time going, if you gambled on a little football yesterday, NBA national boost right now, only with DraftKings, only with PHNX. Download the app now. Sign up with promo code PHNX. Place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on any NBA team to win their game. Get this, get $150 in free bets if they do. Not the spread, mind you, just the outright winner. So, I mean, hell, you might want to pick against the Phoenix Suns these days with what's going on there. That's promo code PHNX, only on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See those show notes for details, Bo.
Let's talk about more good stuff. How about that sweet, sweet nectar that they brew in Tempe at Four Peaks Brewery, one of our favorite partners here at PHNX, and we're actually joining up with them for a huge event on January 13th. We are just, 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away from the PHNX Tea Party presented by Four Peaks at Dobson Ranch Golf Course, renting out the entire driving range. Come hang out, Get that big drive energy with the PHNX crew, your fellow diehards out there, talking all the PHNX sports you can handle. We could talk cars with Johnny and myself, or you got the Suns crew out there. They're doing the pregame, they're doing a watch party, and they're doing their postgame there at Dobson Ranch Golf Course. And all throughout the night, you got golf, food, drinks, contests, prizes, and more. Hang out. You're going to get free beer samples and swag. Can't beat it. Get your ticket today. Click the link in the description and reserve your spot right now, and you can save some coin. If you're a diehard, check the Discord for your special link. You'll save up as high as 20% on this off-season event. As I said, it's the PHNX Tea Party brought to you by Four Peaks. And if you just want to go get some great beer, great food, great atmosphere, head over to the 8th Street Brewery in Tempe. Get yourself a kilt lifter.
Keeping this conversation going on a Monday. Jordan P., I love that comment. We're going to get to that comment here after a while. But right now, let's talk about head coaching prospects. Go big or go home for the Arizona Cardinals. A big fish may have just entered the free agent pond for the Arizona Cardinals. Bruce Nolan today basically coming out and saying if Jim Harbaugh gets an offer, he's going to take it at the NFL level, meaning his days at Michigan could be numbered. You couple that with the fact that Sean Payton is putting together a coaching staff. He's going to be in on it. So then you think to yourself, okay, will the Cardinals, who are they going to have to compete against? And you know where we're going to go. Are projecting vacancy tiers. This is getting smaller and smaller by the week each passing, and the Cardinals are in a position now to be able to put themselves in a position to be one of the top openings. You look at some of these openings right now outside of the sleepers, and these are deep sleepers right here. These aren't, hey, if this happens, this could happen. No. They would have to completely unfold. If you're Dallas, if you're LA, I think the 5 teams up top, that could be it. We could be sitting here a week from now, Bo, and it's like Houston and Arizona and Washington joined the 3 vacancies, and we've got 5, 6, 7 openings, and that's it. And the Cardinals, to me, looking at that, I think the Cardinals are in a great spot.
Did somebody finally update poor Ron Rivera about his team and their status in the NFL playoffs?
I like Ron.
That?
That was sad.
Old Riverboat Ron. Yeah, he's been through a lot. He was a great player, too, for the Bears. But as far as him knowing, the status of his Commanders team after Carson Wentz took a dump on the field yesterday, he was not informed. And I don't think there's a chance in hell that Sean Payton would sniff that Washington Commanders organization, even if they got some hot new ownership in there. No, you're right. I mean, as far as who's standing in the way of the Arizona Cardinals for the hottest and top head coaching candidate, Sean Payton, it's not a long list. And it's going to come down to Michael Bidwill being prepared to have that conversation with him and pretty much give him whatever he needs. It's as far as power, as far as the power in the organization, and then a blank check to get this deal done, because you don't want somebody like Houston to be able to swoop in and just offer a better offer and kind of sweet talk him away from the Arizona Cardinals. Because if you want to get out of this and expedite a rebuild, the quickest way to do that and make sure that Kyler Murray gets back on track, Sean Payton's your guy. He's your ace.
Sean Payton is the guy, Bo, but I think that Houston team will be a bit attractive, having the first overall pick, potentiality to get Bryce Young at quarterback, having a guy that you can mold. And I don't see it happening in Washington due to the fact that the integrity piece, right? We talk about the investigations, the cultures, everything happening there, and the only sense of stability that they have right now is Riverboat Ron. So I think I see Houston being a problem, but I mean, you got to cut that check, Johnny. You got to give Sean pretty much anything and everything that he wants in order to coach. And I mean, I like Harbaugh too. I mean, he's shown that he could have success with a dual threat quarterback. And I mean, I'm not sure how the fan base would feel about that. That might be a good opportunity to pull him, right?
Well, I put out something on Twitter today. I think it was overwhelmingly well received. That I think it's a failure if they exit January without either Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton. Now that it's basically known that Jim wants to come back to the NFL. And you got people rightfully saying, well, the Broncos and their ownership are going to be aggressive. They're going to pay whatever it costs. I'm not comfortable right now, gentlemen, giving Michael Bidwill any excuses not to be aggressive. The Cardinals have money. They host Super Bowls. They host championships. It's a destination city. He bought a private jet for his team. The facility is first class, right, in the NFL. Mark Davis is the cheapest owner in the NFL. He flies coach. He cuts his own fucking hair. He gave John Gruden $100 million once upon a time and said, fix my organization. Now, that was the wrong person to hitch his wagon to, and he's still, I think, writing some of those checks right now. Then he went and signed Josh McDaniels. The money is there to spend on Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton. And if you enable Bidwill and say, well, the Bidwills can't do it, it's not in their culture, they've never done it before, go with an unknown, blah, 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 you've already lost the offseason. Make them say no to you. And if it comes out and Michael Bidwill was aggressive and he tried everything and he wrote a fat check and Jim's heart was just going back to Indy and Sean just wanted to go back in TV, didn't want to leave LA, I may not like it, Bo, but I can come to grips with that reality. What I can't deal with are teams in worse situations than the Cardinals in non-destination cities in the Midwest being able to land one of these two head coaches, and for Michael Bidwill and company to sit up there in front of you, Bo, in January and say, you know what, it just wasn't in the cards. We're going to go with X coordinator from X team that has never won a damn thing. That's a slap in the face to this fan base when you have endured the most embarrassing season in recent memory and you can't win at home. It's not like 2018. It's not like 2013. This is a gut job to the point where you have to fix every level of your organization. You have to somebody has to come in with an aura around them. Ben Johnson with the Detroit Lions, I'm sorry, Ben, that's not getting it done. You have to get somebody that can come in here and say, I've won at the highest level. Jim Harbaugh's won at San Diego State, at Stanford, in the NFL, and now at Michigan. And Sean Payton was a winner almost every year in for New Orleans. The Aints that were on the same level as the Arizona Cardinals. That's what you need. You cannot rely on a complete unknown to come in here and expect it to be different. You could get lucky, but that's we can't bank on that. Bruce Arians, Bo, fell into this team's lap because they got passed over for other interviews, and then Arians got told no by the dipshits in Chicago, and they were gifted Arians. They were not forthcoming and say, well, Bruce is our guy from the start. They lucked out, and they found each other. You have to be the front of the line, Michael, not the back of the line.
No doubt about it. I think that as far as excuses, you'd be hard pressed to find any to pass on the crop of coaches that are emerging right now in the 2023 offseason. I mean, as far as coaching carousels, you've got to always have a bunch of retreads in there. But as far as the retreads that are at the top of the list right now, and Harbaugh and Payton, their success is undeniable. I mean, what Harbaugh was able to do in 4 seasons for the 49ers, it was due to just as far as the front office there, the leadership with the 49ers that pushed him out, which is absolutely ridiculous. That's on them. That wasn't on Harbaugh and not having the ability to coach him up. And then what Sean Payton was able to do, transform a city that when, as Johnny's pointed out, and when Damien and all of us have been grown up, we're similar ages. The Saints, you had all their the Aints, they were wearing the paper bags on their head, their fans were, before Sean Payton went there and transformed that city with Drew Brees for 16 seasons. Like, you don't have like top-notch candidates available, and that's what they have. And with Denver being in the mix, and Indy kind of being in the mix, and Houston being in the mix, and not a long list of openings or vacancies, you have no reason not to be in on one of these big fish as far as the head coaches go.
Okay, Bo, Johnny, I get that. And I mean, obviously, Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh are top tier. They're what it looks like to be a coach. What's that? Okay, you don't get them. And he opens the checkbook, and Harbaugh goes to Indy, and Payton finds another deal. What are you upset about DeMeco Ryans or Bieniemy?
No, and
being
a
coordinator?
Bo and I
being a head coach?
Yeah. But here's the thing. Then you have to work it's just like the draft big board. We talked about it yesterday. Here's our number 1 prospect. We work our way down. I think DeMeco Ryan would be a nice fit. You steal him from a division rival. But you have to go from the point of, okay, we can't have these blue chippers. I want the best coordinator in the NFL, and that's DeMeco Ryan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't go all the way down and saddle for some unknown who's just going to take the job. That is, you need somebody that's going to reinvigorate the fan base. So right. I would need to hear all the facts on why, and it's going to come out if they don't, why they wouldn't and couldn't land a Payton or a Harbaugh, and Bidwill needs to be ready to face that. We talked about it on the postgame show yesterday, gentlemen, PHNX Cardinals postgame show after they lost to Atlanta. Michael Bidwill is treading on shaky ground right now, where the perception of him, not as a person, but as an owner, is starting to shift more toward his late father, who was not a good owner. Michael has gotten a lot of things right. He got the stadium built right. He's hired some winning people, got this team to a Super Bowl, much more relevant. It's time to graduate from junior high and take the next step. It's time to rejoin the pros and the big boys in the NFL, and not because right now you're slipping back into irrelevancy. And that's not where any of us want to be. And the only way to do that, I believe, is to get not a quick fix, but a permanent fix. That to me, banking on finding the next blah, blah, blah. When has the franchise ever done that? What you've done is you've been looking for the next Mike Tomlin for 30 years, and you've struck out outside of Bruce Arians. So you should just say, well, you know what? I'm going to pay a premium for a premium, and it's going to work out.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a proven commodity versus unproven commodities, right? Everybody loves the romantic idea of finding this diamond in the rough, finding this up-and-coming coach, finding the next Sean McVay, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, guys who, paid their
Brady
dues.
Was a 6th-round pick. Take a 6th-round quarterback.
Everybody wants to be a 6th-round pick that comes out of nowhere and becomes the GOAT, right? I mean, that's the American dream. But at the same token, it's like it's hard. And we've seen with Kliff Kingsbury, I mean, it's an inexact science, and you can see some success early on, but you have to kind of vet these guys season in and season out. And if they can't adjust, and what we've seen with Kingsbury is inability to adjust and elevate, I think that's the risk that you take. And I think at this point right now, with the deal that you signed Kyler Murray to, you need more of a sure thing. And as much as you might fall in love with a Ben Johnson, what he's done with that Detroit Lions offense, or what you like, if you like Mike Kafka, whichever one it is, Kellen Moore, is an endless list. I like Ryans over all those guys just because of his leadership qualities and what he's done in San Francisco on the defensive side of the football. I think that toughness would do very well here, but still an unproven commodity. You've got 2 of them right now. You got 2 guys that have done it. Jim Harbaugh's coached in the Super Bowl, and Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl. It's not like they're Joe Gibbs and they've been, having a racing team for 10 years and then come back to the football field. These guys have been around it. Sean Payton's been, an analyst for this year, and then Jim Harbaugh has been in the Big Ten coaching teams of the college football playoff. Those are 2 guys that, you have to be in on. And if they just say thanks but no thanks, that's not a true indictment. Sure, it's probably a testament to the dysfunction right now. But you have to have those conversations. You have to make those calls.
Guys, given what we've seen this year from the Arizona Cardinals, I think that the Cardinals need a culture shock, and they need a bigger name than a guy like Kyler Murray. They need someone that's going to come in and take that attention away, and it's all going to be predicated on all those reasons that you just mentioned, Bo. You got a guy, Sean Payton, won a Super Bowl, a guy like Harbaugh, who's played and has the respect of the college and the professional football world, and he's shown that he could win. And if you get a guy like that, I just don't know if these other coordinators are going to have that impact on Kyler Murray. No doubt. Right? Because they're not bigger names than him. So you have to get that level of respect established. And I think someone that's going to be accountable, disciplined, and a proven winner, and a bigger name. And there's only two names on that list.
Bo hit the nail on the head. Sure thing. You need a sure thing. And Arizona's animals saying, well, D'Amico Ryans and Steve Wilkes all over again. We don't know that, but we also don't know if he's going to be a good head coach. No one can tell you that today. Michael Bidwill can't, right? John Lynch can't. Kyle Shanahan can't. Nobody knows. It's the same reason why Eric Bieniemy's not a head coach. Nobody knows, and nobody is willing to take a risk on him. We know Sean Payton, winner. Jim Harbaugh, winner. Those are facts. You can't argue that. Jim Harbaugh never had a losing season in the NFL. He's won everywhere. Sean Payton won a Super Bowl in New Orleans, and every year they had Drew Brees, they were in contention. They were in NFC title games. No one else you can say that about. We can throw a party if they hire a coordinator that's got the number 1 offense or the number 1 defense. But we fast forward to next September, right, in October, hopefully with Kyler Murray, and shit hits the fan and this team's under 500, what's it going to look like with X coordinator? Are they going to pee down their leg when they're going up against Kyle Shanahan, right? Are they going to get exposed offensively or defensively by Sean McVay? Or are you going to hire a proven winner like a Harbaugh or a Payton? And to do that, you have to court them just like you courted J.J. Watt once upon a time, and you have to write a fat check. That's the end of it. Are you willing to pay for an elite head coach? Because if you are, then it's time to reassess and re-enter the Super Bowl picture. If you're not, then the fans in the comments are going to be proven right that Bidwill is not a winner. He's not trying to win. That don't allow us to be right about you, Michael. Prove us wrong that you're not deteriorating to the point where we're just complacent here. And I want to go to this next graphic here, which gives me some hope here. This is from Benjamin Allbright. We didn't have time to talk about this yesterday, but this is from Benjamin Allbright, who's locked in. I have a relationship with Ben. He's got over 100,000 followers. He is legitimate. If you follow his Twitter, he's usually pretty spot on. He covers the Broncos. He's an NFL insider in general. For our audio listeners, any team wanting to acquire Sean Payton is expected to have to trade a first rounder to the Saints. That's not news, but somebody at ATL9 are asking, are the Cardinals interested or hinted to be interested? And the guy kind of tongue-in-cheek says probably not. And Benjamin says, yes, they are interested. So that would tell you two things. That obviously they've got their eye on Sean Payton, and Bo Brock, they've got their eye on moving past Kliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, I was reading up on this, and Jonathan Jones, who's a fantastic reporter for CBS, and he did some work for the HBO sports show where he actually recently did a in-depth piece on the new Suns owner. But he kind of deep dived this with some execs around the league as far as this asking price from the Saints. Like, do you believe it? Do you think they'll get it? And a lot of them were like, well, that's pretty rich for anybody's blood out there for the NFL. But one exec said they'll maybe get like a second and a fourth, which is more reasonable. But they think that the Saints are in a spot that is kind of unprecedented outside of, going back almost 20 years with John Gruden when he was with the Raiders and he commanded multiple first round picks. So yeah, it's looking a little bit tighter than we initially thought for Payton. We thought it was more of a Bruce Arians situation where he retired and there was no chance of going back to New Orleans, but second, a fourth, something more reasonable. I don't think you're not going to give up a top 5 pick for a head coach. I don't think the Saints would even expect that.
We talked about it yesterday. No teams in the 20s are going to be in on Sean Payton, we assume. Right. So then that pick becomes unattainable from whoever, whether it's Houston, Arizona, Indianapolis. Denver doesn't even have a first-round pick. These teams, it's basically they want a first. They're going to be looking at the Cardinals because their picks basically the lowest in the first round, Damien.
But they've also had past practice with this, right? Coaches that they've traded picks. And what'd you say, Bo? Like, I think it was a 4th round in the past that they've done it before. And I know this is different circumstances, obviously, with Sean Payton as a head coach. And I could see a 2 and a 4, even deferring the first pick to 2024, maybe 2025 in terms of getting a first round draft pick. If you really believe, Johnny, like you said, you really believe this deal needs to get done. And by all accounts, it sounds like it needs to be Sean Payton or Harbaugh. And if you're willing to give up, if the Cardinals are interested in giving up a first rounder, and that's what the Saints want, it may not be this year and maybe 2 years in the future. Or would you sacrifice that for securing your future winning with this team?
Yeah, of course. Because you know what? At the end of the day, one draft pick is not going to make or break this team's success. The wrong coaching hire sets the franchise back 3 to 5 years. If you want to hoard draft picks and hire a bumblefuck coach because you didn't want to part with them, I don't care. That's not going to make her. The coach dictates everything and the quarterback. You have those two in house. I'm sorry. Like I've said this time and time again. They get the right coach with Kyler Murray. You can have the rest of the roster and you can start clean and you can compete in 18 months. If you're the rest of your roster, shit, right? But the Cardinals roster isn't bad. It's close. Yeah. It needs a couple tweaks. It is not a draft pick away, but it is a head coach away. And that to me is way bigger. Now, am I giving up a top 6 pick? No, because I think that's ridiculous. They're not going to ask for that. But can I get creative and say a 2 this year and a 3 next year, or 2 3s, or whatever
if they're told to fuck off at the say a first round pick, they'll understand, right? It's like if we shoot, right? Let's negotiate.
I'm asking for that. Of course you do. Yeah. They know that Dennis Allen is not as good as Sean Payton, and so they're like, well, okay, we're stuck with Dennis Allen. It's tough because we're going to watch Sean Payton went elsewhere. Help us alleviate those concerns. Now, is it the Cardinals' fault that they didn't get more for Bruce Arians? 100%. 100%. They could have said, no, we want a third for Bruce Arians. We thought we were going to let him coach forever. But again, what franchise you dealing with here that just said, let Bruce go. He'll only win a Super Bowl with our former executive and half of our players in Tampa.
Well, they didn't know they were going to pull the GOAT. They didn't know they were going to get Tom Brady the next season.
Tampa put themselves in a position to do that, though.
They're like, what the first season looked like in Tampa Bay without Tom Brady? They 7-9. Jameis Winston threw 30 picks.
He went 30 for 30.
That's right.
He had his own 30 for 30.
Now, you know what excites me? I don't want to put get too far ahead of myself, but in something that gets lost as far as once you move off of Kliff potentially and you bring in a guy like a Sean Payton, you kind of get the same thing you got from BA, and that's years of experience and relationships in this league. I think there was a lot of people in this league that were upset that Kliff Kingsbury went from 35-40 in the Big 12 to head coaching position with really no experience. And and no like real merits compared to some of the other people out there vying for those jobs. And there were coordinators that were reluctant to join the organization, and there were players that didn't take it seriously. And I think that Sean Payton obviously has a lot of great relationships with players that are still playing at a high level in this league, role players, not, glue guys that would help just add depth to this roster immediately, just based on and built from the relationships that Payton has. And it's just something that I think this organization's been lacking when you have Keim, who has his inability to really hit as far as in the draft, and then Kliff without those relationships, having just a track record with these guys beyond the college level. I think it seriously hurt the depth of this organization. And I think there would be an influx of just depth onto this roster that hasn't been there for far too long.
So do we give him a free, a green card where he's the GM, he's handling everything? I mean, do
he's going to have his hand in it? Yeah, and I think Michael would assume that if you're paying $15 million for a coach, I want him to be involved in everything. I would think it'd be naive to just say, no, you just coach over there. But with Kliff, you had the training wheels on, right? Because he didn't have relationships, as Bo just mentioned. He couldn't put together a staff.
He just didn't have the experience either.
Right. So that's why they paid him nothing, right? So it's you graduate now and you pay a big boy head coach. And I think to Bo's point, we have all been grossly scarred by the personnel development of, let's call them day 3 draft picks and undrafted free agents. We have not found enough Damien Andersons in recent memory. We're lighting those picks on fire, right? Day 3 of the draft, it's just like, boom, his hit rate was about 5%. So that's why you find a Jimmy Graham and a Marcus Colston and these contributors now on day 3 of the draft where your prior regime couldn't do that. We flushed those picks down the fucking toilet here in Arizona. So that's why I'm a little bit more comfortable saying here's a second, because our franchise is not going to be beholden to early picks. It's all or nothing, right? It's very cliche with the Cardinals is all or nothing. Sean looks at everything. He looks at, as Bo mentioned, veteran players, right? Trade scenarios. We're more likely maybe to trade up in the first because our margin for error is not as small as with Steve Keim and company. We can trade up in the first round and be aggressive and sacrifice some day 2 picks because I know I can find and coach up contributors on day 3 and undrafted guys. We're going to bring a bunch of bodies in here and they're going to be contributors from day 1. We're going to play our rookies. Go look at what Marshawn Lattimore did his first year with New Orleans, and Alvin Kamara was an instant contributor. Those are all these things. The hiring of Sean Payton would be so layered past, that guy won a Super Bowl. It's everything you know about the Cardinals and what they do right now, which is incorrect, would change. It would be flipped on its head. And that's exactly what would excite me if I'm Michael Bidwill is like, I can pay you knowing that my franchise is in good hands and I can sleep well at night and I don't have to be embarrassed. What more do you have to pay for? It's like us in our lives, we pay for security, right? You pay for security at your house with your kids. You write a check where you want to live in the best area, you want the best schools, and you don't have to worry about it. That's what Michael Bidwill should do with Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh, knowing that my franchise is only going to increase in value if I hire one of them. If I hire Ben Johnson, I know it seems like I'm riding Ben Johnson hard enough. If I hire I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if he can control the locker room. Let me pull this picture up here. Look at this man right here. He's looking at his locker room saying, this is broken. I can't trust the people I have put in a position to succeed. I'm looking at my guy to the left of me. He can't make eye contact with me. You got to get yourself out of that relationship and into one where you're like, I can put my hands on my hips knowing that we're in good shape. We may not win every weekend, but we're in good shape. We're buttoned up.
He was also recognizing that the red velvet jacket was a bad choice after suffering that L. It's like that.
I mean, I don't think it seems. I think it is bad, guys. I mean, I think that was what, Johnny, after 11th, 12th, L or 6th straight.
It takes a lot of guts to wear that when your team's won one home win, walking around.
I mean, he's a billionaire. No matter what, he's doing well.
Is he though? Is he a billionaire or?
But no, I mean, he's doing. I'll just say he's the organization. You own a team in the National Football League. You're doing okay. You're doing all right. But with that, Johnny, to the point that you were talking about with Sean Payton, to me, it's the coaching aspect, developing players. I think that's what Kyler Murray needs. And like you said, you got to coach. And you look at Sean Payton's success when he had Drew Brees, it didn't matter. It was that same type of feel with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't matter the roster. And I know that Jalen Blair talked about it in the chat. Well, Aaron Rodgers has an offensive line. Well, there are other teams that didn't have the offensive line. They lost guys, got teams like the Chargers
Look
who
at
were
what Mike Tomlin's doing right now.
Mike Tomlin, just as competitive as the Arizona Cardinals. One score game, and the Cardinals are losing those games. My point
the Steelers are using injuries as an excuse, right?
You talk about security, you talk about having confidence. Sean Payton gives you that, and he gives you the ability to develop those players, even I think defensively, because he knows what it looks like. And I don't want to take nothing away. I respect anyone who does this game, plays it, coaches it. It is what it is, but it's a results-driven league. And when you go out there and you put your resume on film and you're displaying for the fans, you got to come up in a big way, because this is the National Football League. Everybody's watching, everyone's paying attention. So everything is going to be talked about. And when you fail to meet those standards of an extended contract of $230 million, people are going to talk and expect and want the best. And while going creative and going the abstract route and trying to get a guy, an unproven commodity like Kliff Kingsbury, I think they go opposite with a guy like Sean Payton and get that security.
Great point.
And get that discipline where you could have a guy that's bigger than Kyler Murray and someone that he could look to who's been there, done that, and won.
You tried to buy great value Sean Payton or Sean McVay with Kliff Kingsbury. You said, we're going to get the discount bin Sean McVay, and we're going to hedge our bet that Kliff, if he exploded at USC, would not consider us. So we're going to hedge our bet and buy low on a stock. And it didn't work out. And I liked the hiring at the time, Bo, but I'm with you. You got to make a hard pivot from what you tried to do last time.
Well, no, it was a hard pivot from Wilkes. He was a defensive guy. They went offense, right. It's this would be from a lack of discipline, complete players coach, to, a guy who's based on just leadership and discipline. So I saw in the chat asking what are the downsides to Sean Payton. I know we've been talking him up for the last couple of weeks. Anybody got anything for me?
Too much winning.
I would just say, no, guys. Only thing I would say is just ego. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Ego, when they get in those positions and you get that amount of money and you feel that, that ability to just say and do, whatever you want. That's the only conflict. But I think, we saw it happen. Some lived it with Jerry Jones and Jimmy, I'm forgetting his name, with the Cowboys.
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, they won multiple championships and they couldn't make that marriage work. So, there's always something to be said. But I think if one can humble themselves, and like Michael can humble himself and like, hey, it's for Cardinal fans and for this organization, I can be the backseat on this. And no matter what, I'm winning if the organization is winning. And it could happen, Bo. I don't see really any, bad or issues with
he's gonna be 60 next year. That would probably be Bruce Arians
60 and 60, baby.
I agree with that, but I think you obviously want somebody who's gonna be around for a long time, and Sean already had to walk away, so that would be my only minor concern. I have no concerns about underdog.
The Arizona streets, Bo. The Arizona streets may be attractive to Payton.
Underdog fantasy is attractive to me as somebody who's struggled with year-long fantasy shit teams. I can go to Underdog Fantasy on a daily basis and draft up against 5 of my friends, and the highest scoring squad for that night wins that cold hard cash. And if I don't win, I can pivot to the next day, draft up to 6 NBA players, no positional limits, and that is it. We've had a banger of a time. Listen, Devin Booker and company, he was hitting the higher of all of his points on Underdog Fantasy. I'm going to have to look a little bit deeper now to find some positives with the Phoenix Suns, or I'm going to have to take some of their lowers. It's super easy to get started. All you got to do, go to UnderdogFantasy.com, download the app, sign up with promo code PHNX. Underdog Fantasy is going to match your first deposit up to $100. Again, UnderdogFantasy.com. You download the app, use the promo code PHNX. You get a free $100 if you deposit up to $100. Get in on the action today, Bo.
If you're looking to improve the decor of your house, the comfortability of your house, you're looking for some nice furniture, there might be an estate sale coming up in Paradise Valley in maybe about a week from today. Maybe some lion paintings available for you, maybe a couch that you've seen from a draft day picture. Outside of Kliff Kingsbury's furniture, what I'm getting to, best way to upgrade your furniture is through More Furniture, and you're going to get a better deal on it because you can find anything you need for your living room, bedroom, dining room, wherever you're looking to improve your decor. You can do it with More Furniture. Morefurniture.com. They got the white glove delivery that's unmatched. You can get it. You can order it in the store or online at morefurniture.com. They'll deliver it to your house. They're not just going to drop it on the doorstep. They're going to march it into your living room, bedroom, dining room, and they're going to set it up exactly how you want it set up. We received our office furniture just like this. They were unbelievable. They pretty much got everything just dialed in as much as, our guy GM saw he wasn't going to expect anything less. He got the white glove delivery for More Furniture. You should too. Save big on the best furniture in the Valley when you head to morefurniture.com.
All right, everybody. Pivoting now to some draft talk. I don't know if you knew this or not. Cardinals have a high draft pick because they haven't won many games this year. So we get to talk about where they stand heading into the final week of the NFL season. If we could, Mr. Shano, let's see that draft order for next spring. Right now, the Arizona Cardinals 4-12. Listen, it's been a shit year, but we're going to be rewarded, hopefully, with a blue chip prospect. The Cardinals can finish no worse than 6 should they win on Sunday at Santa Clara. If they lose, and let's say Denver beats a Charger team that could be sitting players, Chicago pulls an upset, the Cardinals would leapfrog both of those teams. They can finish as high as second overall. They can't flip Houston. Houston has, I think, at worst, the top 2 pick in the NFL draft. So right now, gentlemen, you're looking at that draft order, and then we're looking at a Will Anderson, of course, a Jalen Carter. Should we be able to talk ourselves into other positions, guys that are going to emerge, or maybe they've already emerged for you that the Cardinals should be considering? Maybe not a name, but a position group outside of just elite front 7 player. Bo, I'll start with you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think you have to have an open mind. You've got a very talented crop coming in, especially I think on the defensive side of the ball. And we've seen a ton of guys already declare together. Today, Alabama, we saw a flux of talent already headed to the draft. Obviously, the quarterback position, pass rush position, running back is something maybe later in the draft you can look at, even though you got James Conner locked in for a couple more years. But no, I think you have to kind of keep an open mind. Offensive line is obviously something that Arizona Cardinals fans have wanted to upgrade for far too long. But I get excited because I see this where you've got the Cardinals along with the Bears, and then, Seattle, we'll see what they do as far as the quarterback position. But all those, there's a ton of teams that are quarterback needy behind the Cardinals in the top 10. There's a ton of them. And there's a ton that are going to be trying to vie to get up ahead of each other to get in on one of these young quarterbacks, whether it's CJ Stroud or whether it's Bryce Young or a Will Levis from Kentucky or Anthony Richardson, if somebody falls in love with him. Obviously, great size, great athleticism. The Cardinals are in a pretty prime position to do whatever they want. Ringo, he had a rough college football semifinal, but absolutely a local kid that has a lot of skill. But yeah, you look at the cornerback spot. You don't know what's going to happen with Byron Murphy. You know you're depleted as far as that outside of Marco Wilson going forward. So yeah, I think that this Arizona Cardinals team is in a position with having some of the premier positions with some guys that can make some plays and make a difference. But you can also find some guys, outside of the ones that we've been talking over and over about, Jalen Carter's, Will Anderson's. You can look outside of those guys, no doubt about it.
Hey, DA, you're muted, my man.
Sorry about that, guys. In those one-score games that we talked about, it was teams' ability to run the football, right? So it's a prime must-get. As you feel about Sean Payton, Johnny, that's how they need to feel about a defensive interior lineman or outside linebacker like a guy like Will Anderson. That being said, Bo, to your point, if that doesn't happen and you can move back and secure multiple first-round draft picks and get a guy to play center or get a guy to play tackle, because let's be real, Kyler is their most protected asset, or least protected asset, but most invested in, right? So they need to protect him, and you can do that and get other positions throughout that process and acquire more picks. It's definitely the way to go. And with the exception of defensive line and outside linebacker, you have to go offensive line and protect Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I think this is a line of scrimmage draft. They've gotten, let's call it cute for the last couple of drafts. Off-ball linebackers, too much predicated on the wide receiver, too much emphasis on a wide receiver. And I love Quentin Johnson. Got to see him up close at the Fiesta Bowl. But, it's one of those things where this team, the identity of this team is kind of soft, right? They can't run the ball effectively. They don't move people on the defensive side of the ball. Their run defense has not been good since really Todd Bowles left. It's deteriorated time and time again. No Calais Campbell. To me, it's just, can they get back to basics? I would argue that's what the New York Giants did this year. It's like, yeah, we're not going to go flashy. Can anybody name the receivers? No, Kenny Galladay's terrible. They traded away Kadarius Toney. They said, okay, we're going to be able to run the football, and we're going to get after people with a pass rusher. They got the first-round kid Thibodeau out of Oregon. The Cardinals should try to follow that blueprint if they can. So I know a lot of people say, well, you got to go BPA, best player available. I think that has to be weighted, gentlemen, next to the big, 3 to 5 positions of value. Of course, quarterback, which they have, but then it's offensive line, defensive line, edge rusher, and then maybe a corner, although I don't love it. Especially, I don't love a corner unless they're generational Patrick Peterson in the top 5. So if they're staying put, which I think, given the way that CJ Stroud has played, I think he's forced himself in the conversation of being a top 3 to 5 quarterback. Bo, you've mentioned it time and time again. There's going to be a good player push to the Cardinals. If they lose this weekend, which the Niners have everything to play for, they're playing for a top seed, right? They want to set themselves up for a bunch of home games for Brock Purdy in the postseason. Cardinals are 4-13. Let's just all assume that. I haven't even looked at the line because I don't want to, put bleach in my eyes. But they're going to be in a position where I think at minimum 1 quarterback is going to go ahead of them, potentially maybe 2. And if they're picking 4, 3 positional players, two to 3 defensive linemen, a tackle that'll be interesting that you could maybe play at guard the first year and kick them outside. They're going to have options where impact player, starter, blue chip, as we like to call it, should be there for them to run up to the podium. And if not, if they don't absolutely love a guy, if there's not a consensus, let's say worst case scenario, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter go 2 and 3, and you're sitting there and you're like, I've got some options here to trade back. Sure, you trade back, right? But it's got to be for the right kind of value to the point where you're not picking a Zaven Collins, with all due respect, at 15 when there's a huge drop of talent off the board.
Absolutely, man. No doubt about it. That's exactly kind of, you don't want that to happen, but teams fall in love. I think it's inevitable that we're going to see a CJ Stroud, Bryce Young debate all draft season long, right? Aren't we? I think that these guys.
It shouldn't be, though.
No, you like Young a lot better.
Yeah, Bryce Young is that guy, and he's always showed up. Granted, one would say that he had the best to make the most with, right? And so did CJ Stroud, right? But I saw him in inclement weather playing against Northwestern this year. Granted, it was windy, but it just seemed a lot of those games, right? You see the difference between a lot of those games are going to be inclement weather, and come November, December, and even January, and you're going to have to show up. And all respect for CJ Stroud, I thought he played his best football in that championship game and did a lot for himself. But I think that there's a clear favorite for that number 1 in Bryce.
Yeah, we'll see kind of another just draft, and we've seen a ton of them, right? Where it's been like Manning, Leaf, and Manning's been the choice all along, but. That will be something that we're going to see be force-fed, I think, all draft season long. And
for sure.
But I think it's going to put Stroud in a position and the Cardinals in a position to where, top 3, you'll probably have 2 quarterbacks selected. So if they stay at 4, I think they're going to be in a good spot to get the best non-quarterback available.
Listen, I think we watched Denver, a spirited Denver team with no Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson losing on Nickelodeon, to come out and play well against Kansas City. And now they're in an opportunity where are the Chargers going to start pulling starters this week? They've already locked up now their 5th seed. And so they could be in a position where it's like, we're going to rest some people ahead of Jacksonville. That's very tempting for Russell Wilson to go out and say, well, we don't have a 1st-round pick for us to screw up, and we want to push that down for the Seahawks. I think there's a pretty good chance the Cardinals exit this weekend. I don't think Chicago's going to help us at all, because that situation right now, I don't even know if Fields is going to play this weekend. They looked like they didn't want to compete against the Detroit Lions. I think there's a 50-50 chance. We're sitting on our post-game show. We're talking about a couple different things, including a head coaching change and the 3rd overall pick, which would be an absolute godsend, because then we could have the discussion of who do you want, Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, and go from there. But there is that little uncertainty, Bo and Damien, where it's like you're picking 4, and we got a long way to go, and people can talk themselves in and out of love with prospects. But, man, picking 3 just feels like you're in much more control of who's going to be there and who's not.
Don't say that, plant-based carnivore. Don't you dare say that. Don't put that evil on poor Jalen Carter. He didn't fall out of a window after smoking synthetic weed like poor Robert Kimdichie.
Didn't he buy like himself a Panther, or he wanted to buy a Panther with his signing bonus?
Robert Kimdichie's a good dude. It just didn't work out well here, but he's a great
football
kid.
Wasn't his first love. Football was not his first love.
Dude loves life. Dude loves life for sure. Yeah.
All right. If you love football life, go to gophnx.com. Read up from our guy Howard Balzer. Listen, we love Howard. He's the PHNX Cardinals beat reporter. He's got a lot of good insights, some great takes, and again, it's one of those things where if you don't agree with Bo and I, you're probably going to agree with Howard. If you don't agree with Damien, maybe you agree with Frank. We're not all like-minded. We have these conversations with you on gophnx.com, in the comments, on the member Discord, because it's healthy. Because if we all try to think similar, then it's not fun discussion. And we got to put
not contrived debate. It's not like
right.
Skip Bayless and Woody Page back in the day. It's not
but
cold
Howard
pizza.
He believes.
And guys, just throwing it out there. Balzer believes that he said that it's more about the injuries. I'm just saying, if you guys see his recent tweet,
right?
he's talking.
We love
about,
Howard.
he's talking about the injuries.
Vehemently disagree with that.
Fair enough.
He knows
I'm
that.
just saying that may be a national narrative if nothing happens.
But I agree. But then Howard put out another tweet that I said I 100% agree with. He's like, these people that want Kliff gone, but they won't trade a pick for Sean Payton. Like, what are you doing here? 100% agree with that. So, again, we love Howard. Check him out. His work is unparalleled. GoPHNX.com. Promo code HOWARD. Become a diehard. You can get up to, I think, 20% off for our big event on January 13th with Four Peaks at the golf event. Check it out. Again, you will not be sorry that you did. I feel like this week and into next week, we should just be live 24 hours. Producer Shane, our head producer Jake will probably kill us. But, this is going to be one of those things where if you don't have your alerts set up at PHNX Sports on YouTube, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, I'm not tooting our own
subscribed.
horn.
If you're not subscribed,
and get the bell going, get the alerts ding to your phone. Because, again, we're going to save you from having to keep scrolling and getting a neck cramp on Twitter. We're going to be ready to go live should anything break with this team. But in the meantime, he's Damien Anderson. He's Bo Brock. I'm Johnny Venerable. Like this video. Share it around the YouTube algorithm. Get it to Michael Bidwill so he knows anything outside of Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh, unacceptable, right? We're back later this week to break it all down ahead of Cards-Niners. Are we even going to talk about that game? A little bit, probably. But we're going to talk about everything else going on with this franchise. Until then, have a good evening, everybody.